Hello and welcome to the Happy Little Futures podcast. As always, let's start with a nice deep breath in and out. Fantastic. So this week is Mental Health Awareness Week, and the theme for this year is action. And I thought this was a really good chance to just sort of discuss really the different types of action that you can take and then give you a few ideas. I've got 5 little things, little actions that you can take to support your mental health now and every day. So, first of all, when it comes to mental health, there are 2 different types of action that we can take to support our mental health. One is preventative action, and the other is action in response to having a mental health problem or struggling with your mental health. And I'm very passionate, very, very passionate about preventative action. Having gone through, if you've listened to podcasts of mine before, you'll have heard sort of like about my postnatal anxiety and depression and stuff like that. And having gone through that and tried to work through the mental health struggles I've had in the past and physical health as well, with sort of like fibromyalgia and stuff like that, and manage that in a heightened state without already having the tools, is extremely challenging. It is extremely challenging to do that. And for me, this is why I'm so passionate about trying to put in preventative measures, create that mental health toolkit that can help you if you are in a heightened state of emotion, but also help you to not get to the point where you're struggling with your mental health so much that you need to take time off work, you need to sort of then take responsive action and stuff like that. So reactive is possibly a better word than responsive. So that's why I do what I do. I enjoy trying to support families, children, those that support children, teachers, sort of carers, support them in helping children to develop those mental health toolkits, those preventative actions, preventative skills, so that they are less likely to struggle with mental health when they're older and more likely to be able to support themselves if they do struggle with their mental health when they're older. That's what I am really, really passionate about. And there's lots of little things that you can do to prevent your sort of mental health from worsening and to sort of put in those toolkits and stuff in place so that it doesn't get to a point where you feel you have poor mental health. So that's preventative action. By comparison, sort of reactive or responsive action is when you or someone you care for or someone you know is struggling with their mental health. It's taking steps at that point to support them, to try to help them through those moments. This could be through things like just sort of helping them to recognise that they might not be okay. So if you sort of start to notice changes in personality, noticing them withdrawing, things like that, sort of just taking that step towards sort of opening a conversation with sort of like, are you okay? Is there anything going on? I've noticed that you're not as forthcoming in meetings and stuff like that as normal. I just wanted to touch base and see how you're doing. So that's sort of an action you can take for others. And for yourself, it would be things like speaking to a GP, maybe referring for therapy and talking therapy or cognitive behavioural therapy and things like that. There's lots of other different types. Or maybe even sort of starting to learn mindfulness, meditation, things that might support your mental health and hopefully sort of bring you back to a place of better mental health. Even things like going to the gym, that bit of self-care, that as the last episode was called, sort of putting your oxygen mask on first. So, and we all know that I'm not the biggest fan of that phrase. So things like that. So regardless of where you're at with your mental health, there are little steps that you can take. By far the hardest of the two, preventative and responsive action, is sort of that responsive action, responding to poor mental health, to feeling heightened, to struggling potentially with daily activities, sleep, things like that. That by far is the hardest, because if you've not got those sort of preventative tools, those skills in place already to help support you in those moments, then you are then trying to both battle sort of your mental health problem and learn new skills and carve out that time. And in those moments, actually, it's extremely difficult because there is no quick fix necessarily. There is nothing that can necessarily just snap you out of it. It's very much sort of you have to take time. And even for people that haven't been on antidepressants, even with those, there is sort of like a build-up time in which it sort of takes time for those to start having an effect on your mental health. So it's not the most straightforward of times to be sort of trying to support your mental health when you're not doing so well. But regardless of where you're at, there are little steps that you can take in order to support your mental health. And I've got 5 little steps here that I'm going to just go through with you so that you can have a little bit of a toolkit for yourself, either every day, just to support you in that preventative way, or as a responsive action. But before I do that, I just want to thank our sponsor, who is Rowan Fox Clothing. And if you have ever seen or heard our podcast before, you will know that Rowan Fox is a fantastic sustainable clothing brand with the most beautiful hand-drawn designs. And you can head to rowanfox.com or find Rowan Fox on Facebook and Instagram in order to have a look at their designs and get yourself something lovely. So, our responsive and preventative actions that we can take. 5 little things. So the first one, and this is one that I'm quite passionate about, but I think, especially when you're in a place where you're not particularly in the best place, to do the next thing, and when people say the next thing that I'm going to say to you, it can be quite frustrating. So what I want you to think about doing as one action is just pausing and taking a breath, just breathing. And that is both the simplest and hardest thing to do. And I say that with love. And as a meditation coach who clearly does that and supports people with that for a living, it's an extremely challenging thing to do. For many of us, we weren't ever taught as a child how to breathe. And I know that sounds silly. It's an autonomous sort of thing that we do. But we weren't ever taught how to breathe deeply, how to pause and breathe in those moments when we're feeling stressed, anxious, worried, upset. And it's a very difficult thing for us to just breathe. So I'm going to give you a couple of different things that you can do. So different breathing activities. So for me personally, just really being intentional about taking a breath. So I will pause, and a bit like we do at the start of this podcast, I'll just breathe in and then I'll breathe out through my mouth. And I see it as a bit of a reset button, essentially. That can be really powerful. For others, doing that, it's hard to control your breath in those moments. So if you were to breathe in for a count of 4 and out for a count of 6, lengthening that out breath, that can help to activate that parasympathetic nervous system. And another one that many of us have heard of is box breathing. So for that, we breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, and hold for 4. And again, That helps to reset that parasympathetic nervous system. The longer you do that for, the more benefit you'll have. However, especially when you're looking after children, you don't always have a long time to do that in. It's not always the easiest of things to do. So just taking that one simple breath, that in for 4, out for 6, or just a deep breath and being really intentional with it, that can be extremely powerful. So I want you to have a think about doing that. The second step the second action even that you can take, and this is easier in some environments than in others, is to just step outside and just connect with nature, connect with the outside world. If you can, get a bit of sun. It seems to be, the weather here in the UK at the moment is kind of sunny and warm at times, but also pretty chilly and going grey a lot more often than we normally see during May. So just stepping outside, taking a moment just to really observe, look at the trees, look at the bushes, notice how the leaves are dancing on the wind, look for any clouds, any shapes of clouds in the sky, listen for birds, watch birds flying, like maybe even just spotting a hoverfly or a bee just buzzing around. Just take some time in nature. And again, it doesn't have to be long. It can literally be for 30 seconds. And that is better than nothing. But connecting with your environment, getting yourself out of those sort of 4 walls, that is extremely powerful. So that's another fantastic action that you can take. The next one is possibly the hardest for me personally. And this makes me feel very lazy when I say this next one, and I say that I admit that it's the hardest for me, but that is to do some exercise. And when I say exercise, I don't necessarily mean going out and doing a full workout at the gym. I don't necessarily mean doing an hour-long yoga session. What I mean is taking that time to move your body. It could be some simple stretches. It could be jogging on the spot for 10 seconds and just raising that heart rate. For me, actually, when I'm struggling, I find that I can sort of almost get paralysis. I don't know whether it's the ADHD or whether it's sort of anxiety or what it is, but when my mental health is not so good, I almost get sort of like this sort of paralysis. And I have a spot in the house and I tend to sit in that spot and struggle to move. So for me, that exercise point is actually making the effort to get up and switch the kettle on. Even if I don't need a drink at that point, I'll go and put the kettle on, or I'll stand up and I'll go to the toilet, or I'll go and see if the dog wants to be let outside. Something like that, especially working from home on my own during the day. That can become very challenging. And it's something actually I heard off another podcast. I can't fully remember whose it was. I will have a ponder, and if I remember, I'll put it in the comments. But I heard about it. They were talking about back pain. It might have been the Clutterbug podcast. And in that one, they were saying that even just getting up and moving that little bit more often, even if it's just to stand up, like I've done it in the past where I've just stood up and then sat down again, that can also help to prevent back pain further down the line. And it's exercise, it's movement, it's moving little and often. We're not asking for a big thing, but just moving your body, getting that blood pumping. That can be a small start towards then potentially going for a walk or walking upstairs and then walking back down again, and just sort of exercising a bit more intentionally. So exercise is a fantastic one. There are also strong links between physical and mental health, and sort of less physical activity both contributing to poor mental health and that increase in activity supporting mental health. So the exercise is a really important one to do. Another lovely action to do is just a little bit of gentle self-care, and it can just be something as simple as getting yourself your favourite drink, your favourite chocolate bar, something you really love to eat. Maybe it's a packet of crisps or a certain sandwich that you enjoy having, and making the point of doing that for yourself and having that for yourself. And it might not be the healthiest of things, but that's okay. But reminding yourself that you're worthy of that, and taking the time to just sort of mindfully connect with that sense of taste, connect with that drink, connect with that food, and just sort of enjoy it rather than rushing it. Which again, if you're busy and running around after toddlers, excuse me, a bit rude. if you're busy and running around after toddlers, it's not the easiest thing to do. But even just being able to make yourself a nice cup of coffee, get the good coffee in rather than the bad coffee next time you go to the shops, and have it as a special treat in the back of the cupboard, that you can have that coffee, you can smell it once you've made it, and even if it's cold when you drink it, the fact that you've made it and smelt it and put that intention into it for yourself, that in itself can be really powerful. Another final one, and this one is both wonderful and sometimes can be quite difficult for us as well, especially if you're in a place of poor mental health. It can be quite normal to sort of withdraw and not necessarily want to speak to people. But connecting with loved ones, with people that you care for and people that care for you, can be really, really powerful. That sense of community, again, really powerful. Or it might even be finding a support group, a local play group, a local sort of neurodiversity group, a local mental health group, things like that. Connecting with others is a really powerful action that you can take towards supporting your mental health. And again, for me, sometimes it's as simple as putting the phone down when I'm struggling, when I'm feeling a little bit more anxious or a bit more stressed than normal, putting the phone down and just cuddling up with the kids and watching their favourite programme, or just sitting and reading a book with them and taking that time to be intentional about my actions and be intentional in connecting rather than necessarily getting stuck in a scrolling loop or something like that. Or for me, I have to admit, sometimes it's Sudoku. I get sort of like caught up in Sudoku and stuff like that, which is good in one sense because it's a hobby that I enjoy, and in another sense, it's not always ideal. And connecting with people for me would actually be more powerful, and making that intentional action to connect with others is really powerful. And sometimes I actually sit there and I teach the kids how to do Sudoku. We're slowly getting there. It's not necessarily helping massively. And the only way that my son seems to get it fully is in relation to chess, and not having, for example, a 2 check another 2 and be in the same line as it. So trying to figure out the best way to teach them to do that is a bit challenging. But connecting with them to do that is really, really powerful. And taking that time and setting that intention. Intention is everything. Setting that intention of connecting with them, it really, really helps. So there are your 5 little actions that you can do. So just to recap, maybe pause and just take a breath, be intentional, maybe use counting if it helps. Think about 4-6, counting in for 4, out for 6, or box breathing. So in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, hold for 4. The next one is just to step outside and just connect with nature, connect with your surroundings, get out of those same 4 walls. Even if you're struggling to get outside the building, go and look out the window and just connect and just look and see what you can see. The next one, my least favourite, is exercise. Take that time to exercise, that time to get your heart rate raising, or even just to move around a little. Go put the kettle on, stand up, sit back down again. Just a little bit of intentional exercise for you. This is possibly my favourite actually, is to get your favourite drink or food and just to take that time to enjoy it. Even if it's just taking a moment to smell it deeply, breathe deeply, and then you get caught up in toddlers and children and life and all of that sort of stuff, taking that time to be intentional in supplying yourself with something you enjoy is really, really empowering. And finally, connect with loved ones, connect with others, even if it's not necessarily someone you know and you feel that actually you'd be feel safer and sort of more comfortable going to a support group so that you're with like-minded individuals. Taking that time to connect with others, a really, really fantastic thing in supporting and preventing mental health. So I'm going to hopefully start to do a few more podcasts. It's been a bit quiet recently. We've had a lot going on at home, and I'm planning on a little few series coming up of sort of different types of mental health conditions and things like that. So just to help you recognise when you might be finding things a bit more challenging. So with that, I'm going to love you and leave you. And I want you just to take a nice deep breath in and out. Fantastic. And have a lovely day.